Alright, we're dealing with shadows here, and what we have is a second comp that's part of that exercise file for lights. And I have set up a room, basically. There's a back wall, there's a floor, there's a left wall and a right wall. And then on top of all that, I have the word shadow. So I colored the word shadow totally white, and then the walls have a very light gray, just so we can see enough of it that we're not totally stumbling here. But some really cool magic that can happen is by playing with lights. So I have light number 1, which is a spotlight. I should name that spot. If I turn that on, all of a sudden the characteristics of our scene change drastically. And if I was to grab the little emitter part of this light cone and move it around, you can see that it illuminates different parts of our room. Very cool. Has some fall off because of the cone nature of this thing. And it'll illuminate the word. Unless I take it really far over there, you can kind of see it's got some fall off. So pretty neat. Play around with that, get used to it. But this is about shadows, so we need to go into a few characteristics of these layers or attributes to make sure that shadows happen. So if you take your light and you hit AA twice, it'll open up light options. It's just the same as going to this thing and then tripping open light options, but shortcuts are good, right? AA for the light options. Once again, cone angle. There you can see it spreading its light around or refining its area a bit more. And then the feathers and all that good stuff. So, cast shadows is set to on. Sometimes it's not. It all depends on how you last left your After Effects files. So sometimes you put a light in and the cast shadows might be set to off, but we want to have cast shadows on. And as soon as I click it, nothing happens. There's no change going on. I'm going to open my cone angle a little bit more. So that means I need to look at the layers themselves that are sort of acting or taking on roles in my comp. So if I select the shadow text and do the same thing, hit AA 2 times, it opens up something called material options. Any layer that is 3D in your composition has material options, and it's basically defining how it's going to behave and respond to light in this environment. So cast shadows is currently set to off. If I click on, I now see a shadow. Isn't that cool? Oh man, it is so cool. So there's my shadow. Maybe now I'm good. I was going to brighten it up, but I think we can see it just fine. So this layer is taking light and then also blocking it. So it is responsible for casting shadows. So having cast shadows on is the trick. If you click cast shadows again, it switches to only. So now I have just the shadow. The pixels that made up the layer are completely gone. And this is handy for certain effects, but usually not desired. And then if I click it one more time, it turns it to off, and I'm back to just the text as it was with no shadow. But I want shadows, so I'm going to turn it on. Sometimes you'd even do this. You turn cast shadows for the light on, you turn cast shadows for the layer that should be blocking the light to on, and it still doesn't do it. It's because there's still things like material options, which I'll open on the floor right now, AA, for whether or not they accept shadows, which can be on or off. So if it's set to off, you will not see any shadows for that layer. So you have to go make sure that all your layers are in the proper order for behaving the way in which you want them to. I am going to open up that spot a little bit more. Come here, you, just so I can see it better. So it's really cool the way I've set up this room, how that shadow will creep across the floor and then up on the wall, and if my light passes across from right to left, the shadow goes with it or crawls back down to the text itself. It's pretty dark, so that's why I brought this ambient light in. I could turn the ambient light on, lightens things up a bit, and now, come here, you. As I move this around, you can definitely see the results of the light and the space and their relationships here. In order for me to have made this actually feel like the shadow is sitting on the floor, I did have to look at this from the front view and physically make sure that shadow, the bottom edge, was touching my floor, which is that blue line that runs right across there. That's just another example of why you would use an orthographic view. Well, there's the shadow again. And yeah, so shadows, if we go back to the light and I hit AA, they do have a darkness, and I could lower that so it's not as prominent. And then I can also soften that up by doing diffusion so that the shadow actually like dies over time or over distance as it's thrown, which is really kind of a great attribute for adding some realness to our work. So you could imagine like a you know, animated logo or something like that, having some 3D presence in its staging, but then also sort of sexying it up a little bit with some lights, some shadows, and as soon as you do, you really end up delivering a piece that feels really tangible and realistic. It's a lot of fun. So play with your lights. I'm just going to do one thing. I'm just going to change the color of it just because I feel like it. Boom, look at that. What would happen if I brought in another light that was a spotlight and its color was like yellow? So now we get into some really cool things too. Check out the dual color just by playing with two lights that have properties of color that either complement each other or maybe sometimes even cancel them out. Cast shadows is set to off for that light, so I'll have to set it on. And now I've got two lights interacting, delivering some cool color to my piece, and they're both casting shadows, and those shadows can totally contradict each other's positions, or it's awesome. Isn't that cool? All right, play around with your lights, have some fun, really see what it can do to build a bit more dynamic presence into your design work.